Hari Om. Welcome to our next lesson from the Bhagavad Gita. The battery on the camera I've been using died. I won't be able to bring it back to life until I get back to New York. It served me well during this European trip, and I hope it has a good life review between births. So I'm using the camera from my laptop. I'm sorry about the quality. Let's start with our opening breath. Since I'm in Italy, let's do it in Italian. Profondo inspiro, lentamente expiro. Feel the mind is clear and open. We left Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield. He had asked Sri Krishna to place him there. It's a huge battle, and there were tens, I think hundreds of thousands of warriors there. But Krishna puts the chariot in front of two very specific people. Bhishma, who is very respected and rightfully so, a very noble person, one of the most noble in the kingdom. And the other person is Drona, who's been Arjuna's teacher since he was a young boy. And Krishna's only words in this first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is, here's who you have to fight. And Arjuna was ready to fight all the not so noble people on the other side. But being put in front of these two great men, it had a deep impact on him, as we'll see shortly. And since this battle is taking place in our heart, we can think of it as the true self telling our soul that all our conditioning, all our samskaras ultimately have to be transcended. And we shouldn't be identified with even the good mental patterns that we have. There's a story about Bodhidharma, who was a disciple of the Lord Buddha. Apparently he got enlightened, and his duty was to bring the Buddhist teachings from India to China. And even though he had probably one of the softest hearts on the planet, his external personality was very gruff, and people were frightened of him. But this one man had this burning question, so he followed him for a while. Bodhidharma turned around and said, held his cane up and said, why are you following me? Get away. And the man said, sir, I really have to ask you a question. I hope you can be patient and answer this one question. What's your question? Well, last week was my 50th birthday, and I spent the day on my own, mostly meditating. And I got into a deep place, felt like the neutral zone, and I saw myself more clearly than I ever have. And it was pretty disarming and uncomfortable to see that even though I have a 50-year-old body, I haven't matured emotionally since maybe the age of 12. I'm a prepubescent emotional being in a 50-year-old body. Can you help me? How am I going to mature and become an adult? And Bodhidharma said, well, have you killed anybody yet? No, sir, I never killed anybody. Well, what do you expect then? And Bodhidharma turned, kept going to China. So the man sat down at the side of the road. He had gotten the answer from the master, but he thought, before I do anything rash, let me make sure I understood what he said. So he caught up with Bodhidharma a few villages later. You again? I told you what to do. So I just want to make sure if I kill somebody, then I'm going to grow up and become an adult. Not just anybody. You have to kill your mother. My mom was, the first time I told the story, my mom was at this retreat, and I was telling the story, and I saw her perk up. And so the man, again, sat down to the side of the road, quieted his mind, thought about what the master said. His mom had been dead for 10 years. So he went deep and he actually saw that his mom had infiltrated every part of his psyche. Every thought wave, what we call vritti, that came up, had some influence from his mom. His whole conditioning was affected by his relationship with his mom. And he saw that killing his mom was not so much the right word. Actually, a nonviolent communication with her was probably more appropriate. He needed to pull his I feeling out of his conditioning, out of his samskaras. For ourselves, we can start with our negative patterns, but eventually we have to recognize that we've never been the mind and we are something beyond that. Thank you for watching this week's video, and I'll see you next week. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.